country of Rwanda experienced a terrible genocide in the summer of 1994. Over 800,000 lives were lost, and thousands of families were displaced due to the war. The international community's response to this genocide was to set up an international criminal tribunal in Arusha, Tanzania. The objective of this tribunal was to indict some of the highest war criminals during the genocide. Locally, Rwandan community members responded differently and set up something called Gacaca, meaning judgment on the grass, where people could come, where victims and perpetrators of the genocide could come and talk about their experience during the war. Gacaca was community justice inspired, and it focused on the restorative justice aspect of the genocide, and it focused on reconciliation so the country could move forward peacefully. Rwanda moving forward after the genocide has progressed much. It has high hopes for the future in building up the city, and its education programs are in full throttle mode. The Rwandan Education Board put in 17,000 computers in secondary schools across the country this year, and in almost 50 schools, have acquired internet connection. This generation of young people, although we're not directly in the genocide, are still feeling the effects of the genocide. And I think it would be important to set up a program in the schools that helps young people deal with what happened in the past and help them move forward in the future. So here is my idea. Okay, my plan for the city of Kigali is to implement Gacaca kwa Watoto in the schools inside the urban city, and then a little bit of the schools in the rural outside of the city. And so here's going to be my plan, and I'll explain it as we go. Gacaca kwa Watoto, today we're going to talk about the objectives of the program, location of where we're going to implement the program, training and things that we need, the curriculum of the program, and the cost factors of the program. Okay, so first the objective. The objective of this program is to have a safe place where youth can go and talk about the war and the genocide and talk about their emotions toward the situation. So we would like to have this space because although Rwanda did have Gacaca for those that were victims and perpetrators of the genocide, I think it would be really important to have sort of the same objective in the schools. Obviously different because these children were not, they are affected by the genocide, but they weren't directly in the genocide. And so the objective of this entire program is to have a space where the youth can go and talk about the war, talk about the history, and to be able to discuss their emotions on the situation. Okay, so why is this important? Again, I think it's pretty common that everyone agreed with the idea of restorative justice and Gacaca for those that were a part of the genocide. And I think some people worry that bringing up the genocide to the youth will fuel some violence and maybe reignite some ethnic tensions. And so I think that it's important to discuss why, kind of the pros and cons of bringing this program into the schools. And the biggest factor of why this is important for the schools is because I think although the genocide happened almost 20 years ago, that there's still the youth of this generation is still dealing with the effects of it. They're still dealing with the stories of what happened. And I think it'd be very, very good to have a holistic idea of what happened in ways that they can talk about the effects of the genocide. So, yeah, now we're going to hear from Dr. Watoto on why he thinks that this would be important to implement these schools. He's a professor at James Madison University. How important do you think it is for the youth to know about the genocide?
So you have to talk about the whole. It's not only the period of the genocide that you want to talk about, but you want to talk about the whole history of a country that actually had gone through an incredible crisis. Students have to know. Everybody needs to know their history. And if the history is one of violence, you have to know, because you know that you cannot move forward effectively for development when that happens. We know that a lot of men died, a lot of women were abused in these particular situations. You're going to have children whose mothers really are having them because they have no other way of aborting them because they are children of the people who abuse them. These are conversations that one have to have. What is love? Love is not limited to an encounter with somebody you like very much, but somebody that you may not even like very much, you have to love them in a certain way in order to move forward, because by confronting that through education, through justice, and through working together, that is the only way you can really create a new nation. Now, if you look at the Holocaust situation, the Holocaust history museums are there so that people will be reminded of that which was there before you move forward. And if we do not get reminded of our evil past, I don't think that we can actually think of a future that is much more peaceful. I believe so.
Cool.
So the whole idea of reconciliation is not to forget, but rather to forgive. Yeah.
Cool. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Location of Gacaca kwa Watoto. Usually, again, implemented in the public schools in Kigali and then the surrounding rural areas of Kigali. They will be outside in the courtyards because I think it's important to separate the academic life of the students and this program. We also don't want to have this program mixing up with academic after-school programs, and so to avoid that, this entire curriculum and program will be done outdoors. Okay, needs. We will have one facilitator and teacher at each school that we are implementing this program. We're going to do it at 25 schools, again, in the city and around surrounding the city in rural areas. And this teacher she will be facilitating the group discussions, and the applicant has to be have a psychology degree with a concentration in counseling, because our program has 4 components to it. It's a history component, a team building component, a counseling component, and a dance curriculum component. So the counseling component is very important, and that's why we want them to have a concentration in counseling. The training portion, we'll have the 25 facilitators and teachers meet in Kigali 4 weeks before school starts. And the point of this training will be to have a more in-depth look at the 4 components of Gacaca kwa Watoto, kind of look at when they talk about history, what they're going to talk about, the counseling, a little bit more in depth about conflict resolution. And it'll also be a time where they can set up a lesson plan. So work with the other teachers, kind of get a unified lesson plan going, and be able to talk to, we'll have people from all over Rwanda come in and talk about history of the war and, again, more restorative justice aspects of the way that they can implement this in the schools. So this will be the training portion. And now we can hear from Dr. Gary Race, who is the director at the Gandhi Global Nonviolence Center at James Madison University, and he will give us insight on what he thinks the trainers should be trained on. Okay, so being a psychotherapist for about 25 years, what do you think the best advice is if we're trying to teach people to guide these students through restorative justice aspects, like if in their schools, if we're putting counseling into their schools, what's your best advice for training the trainers of this process?
I think the most important thing to teach anybody who's trying to help or teach other people or help people understand themselves is to teach them how to be listeners. If you don't develop the skill to fully listen, I think the jargon might be deep understanding or deep listening. If you don't teach people how to really listen at a really intimate level, then they'll never fully understand what motivates and what makes people do or believe the things that they do. So you really have to listen, and to do that you have to be quiet and just bear witness to what people have to say. The solution will come out in that frequently.
Cool. Right. Well, thank you, Gary.
You're welcome, Elise.
Okay, so curriculum. So again, there'll be 4 components of the curriculum for Gacaca kwa Watoto, and the first will be history lessons. And Dr. Onsansa sort of talked about this in his lecture that you saw, but it's important to talk about the holistic aspect of what happened, and not just from the Tutsi or Hutu side, but the whole history from colonialism onward. And so that's why we have a history portion. So it's not so it can be as objective and unbiased as possible, so that the youth can understand from a full perspective of what happened, and not just victims and perpetrators, but how they were all sort of victims. Everyone in Rwanda was a victim of what happened, so it will be good to talk about history of the war and the genocide. The team building aspect of Gacaca Watoto will be, this will be more interactive, and so the history lesson will be more a lecture in a sense, and then this will be more team building, where we're going to do activities with all of the students to kind of reinforce unity, whether they're Hutu or Tutsi, and this will be more fun and interactive side of this program. And then the counseling aspect, which is our most important aspect, this will be where the teacher will kind of talk to the students about, after they've gone through history lessons or talking more about the war, they'll be able to express their feelings on what's going on and have an open space for this sort of counseling. So it'll be, since there's only one teacher, it'll be open to the whole group, and then the teacher can also set up one-on-one appointments with the students. So that's the counseling portion. And then the dance expression will be it's the funnest part of this program, and it will have dance, as you all know, have been a huge part of Rwandan culture for years and years, and I think it'd be good to have this dance portion for the fun aspect of this program, and also to kind of reiterate culture into the program and be able to maybe perform it in the schools. And so this portion is just sort of to reinstitute the roots of culture in what's going on. So yeah, those are the 4 components in the curriculum of this Gacaca Watoto. Implementation and cost. So again, there'll be 25 teachers in Kigali and in the surrounding areas. We'll have a 2-year contract with these teachers, and so the cost, that's going to be the most expensive cost of this program, is obviously paying the teachers. But there'll be minimum curriculum materials, again, because a lot of it is just hands-on, it's very verbal, it's not in class, we don't need desks, pencils, paper, not a lot of technologies involved, so that will be low cost. And then we will reassess the teachers after 2 years, and it's a 2-year contract. So implementation will be in these schools. Again, there are going to be 25 teachers, 1 in each school, and we will, and the cost will be quite low besides the paying the salary of the teachers.
I think it's essential that they talk about it. I think when people live in some level of denial or shame or guilt, but primarily silence, then those kind of emotions and all the feelings and prejudice that were there before the conflict just get pushed underground and will surface at some other point. So I think it's essential that the youth and the young people, but also the people who are involved in that whole conflict, have a dialogue again, so that they can understand each other's dignity and humanness, and it's the only way that real long-term healing will occur.